and welcome to SOFcast. This is your host, Sergeant Major Matt Parrish, and if you're listening on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, whatever, no big difference for you. But if you check out our YouTube right now, you see that we're on location in ESPN Wild World of Sports. Pretty awesome. We're on location to help promo the DoD Warrior Games, which are coming up. And in preparation for that, I've got an awesome guest for you all to hear from today. Ivan Morera, fellow Green Beret, even more importantly, fellow 7th Group guy. We overlap there. Used to see Ivan in the gym quite often, especially after the accident and working back through all those things. First off, Ivan, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking some time out here in Orlando to chat with us today.
Yeah,
how you doing, bud?
I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's an honor to be on your podcast.
Yeah, so, all right, I'll do a quick, sort of background, and I want to kind of throw it over to you as far as, walking us in. But I will just say, bottom line up front, one of the coolest things, like I said, coming up in 7th Group, you different battalions, you don't often get to talk to each other that often. But I remember very vividly being in our gym, and I was rehabbing from some of my neck surgeries and things like that. And I remember there was these times where I would be like, kind of a little bit of tiny heart syndrome. I'm like trying to suck it up a little bit, and I would look over, and you'd have some attachment, and you'd be crushing some deadlift or something. I'm like, all right, man, I gotta go. So thank you for always being one of those guys that I could look at and be like, all right, man, I gotta get after it.
Appreciate
you always
that.
motivated the crap out of all
Thank
of us.
You.
And, little quick background, joined in 2001, conventionally went and deployed both to OEF and then into the invasion in Iraq, and then went brought into SF and came to 7th Group, as I said. One of the coolest things as sort of your title now that I think is awesome is, one, the only upper body amputee that's currently on freefall status, which is phenomenal. I want to talk about kind of that adaptation and getting to where they would let you do that. If you've listened to this show before, talk to people like Nick Lavery from 3rd Group, where lost a leg and had to go through all of this redeploy, coming back in and being tested to make sure it could happen. But also the only one-armed medic, or one-handed medic, I should say, in all of DoD. You don't often get these like only in DoD titles. So anyway, all of that to be said, man. Talk us through just real quickly. You're coming up. You graduate college. What draws you to the military and to being a medic specifically?
So I graduated college in 1999, and in about 2000. So I come from a military family.
Okay. Yeah.
Uncle was in the Navy during Vietnam. Brother was a Marine. Twin brother was a Marine.
Okay. Yeah.
Cousin was in the Navy. Other cousin was in the Army. So after I graduated college, my oldest cousin came up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, it's your turn."
Nice.
I was like, "Oh crap! Oh man, I don't know." And I was gonna get married. My wife and I were gonna get married. And I was like, "Okay." So it took me a little while to convince myself. I was like, "Okay, I'll join the Army."
Okay. Yeah.
And went to the recruiter, talked to them, and I was like, they showed me, hey, you want to be a medic stationed at Fort Carson? And I'm like, oh, man, the mountains. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And for me, I've always had this spirit of wanting to help people.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why I chose to be a medic. I was like, yeah, medical skills, and it was a combat medic. So I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to be with the grunts, and you see like in the World War II movies or Vietnam movies, the doc.
Somebody gets hurt, you're yelling medic, and that's the dude. Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be doc.
Yeah.
So I joined the Army, and I'm in the combat medic course, and September 11th happens.
Yeah.
So I graduate the combat medic course that October, and I get assigned to 112th Infantry, 3rd Battalion, or 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division in Fort Carson.
Yeah.
And a month later, I'm in Kuwait.
Yeah.
We're in Kuwait waiting to get the word to go up into Iraq.
Yeah.
So the word never came, but we come back. I go to a couple of schools, like PLDC, a couple other schools, and then we get the word we're going.
Yeah.
So the crazy thing is my daughter had just been born that past summer. So my daughter wasn't even 1 year old yet.
Yeah.
And
changes your perspective on thinking about going to combat. Yeah.
And then my wife was pregnant with our son.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
So we March of 2003, we deploy to Kuwait. We grab our tracks, and we go up,
Yeah.
you know, and we end up all the way up to northern Iraq, Kirkuk.
Yeah.
And you know, we're there, and it was a crazy time. I'd never been in a firefight.
Sure.
And you know, I'm Doc.
Yeah.
I'm that medic with the grunts, you know, and we're patrolling and we get into some firefights, and I'm like, holy smokes, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I mean, I'm like, man, there's bullets flying, there's tracers passing. I could feel the heat of the tracers going past my face. I'm like, whoa, this is real, you know. And I'm working on guys, you know, guys that got hit and stuff. And then one day we're at a fire base, and an ODA rolls through.
Okay.
And you know, they're gun trucks, 3 gun trucks, you know, and they're all, you know, in their cool uniforms and they're modified, you know, BDUs, and they got the big vest on and the long hair and the beards, and I'm like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And the cool part is the Delta on that team actually came and talked to our battalion PA, and I could hear him talking.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And they're talking. They're actually, like, he's talking in medical terminology, and I'm like, man, that is a smart dude. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So we come back in 2004 from Iraq, and I spent the next 3 months training to go to selection. Now I went to a recruiter, to the SF recruiter.
Yeah.
My wife and I actually both went to the briefing, and my wife's like, "Hey, where do we sign up?" Because she got in. She was like, "Yeah,
that's
this
awesome,
is really
man.
cool."
That's awesome.
So so I train up, you know, and the cool part is, you know, I'm at Fort Carson, so, you know, high elevation, high elevation. So I'm in pretty good shape. So I go to selection, and at that time, selection was the hardest thing I had done in the military.
Yeah. What year was this again?
This was 2005.
Yeah. Okay.
February 2005.
Yeah.
And man, when you know, at the end, you know, they'll call your roster number.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll say, hey, you guys go over there. Well, my roster number wasn't called.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't make it. But then, you know, it was actually First Sergeant, Sergeant Major Cinco.
Yeah, Bobby Cinco.
Bobby
SF
Cinco.
Legend.
Yeah, he was the first sergeant, you know, and he tells those guys whose numbers were called, go over there.
Yeah.
And he's like, guys, welcome to SF.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
I went in 03, and Bobby Cinco was there at the same time. Yeah. So if you're a listener out there, as part of selection, you never know when your roster number gets called. Good thing, bad thing. You never know when you show up for a ruck or a run, how far it's going to be. Like, it's radio silence basically the entire time. It's just do your best. And then you come, you know, at the end of these 3 weeks, and, you know, you're still there. You haven't quit. Yeah. And there's that formation for every single one of us. And sometimes the guys whose numbers get called is a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. And all of us have that moment of like, oh, man, I see half the guys go that way. And I'm in this one. Am I good or not? Yeah. So you go back, I'm assuming, go back, get your stuff, come back to the Q course.
Yeah, so I go back. Actually, I go out to airborne school, go to airborne school.
Okay.
And then pack up the wife and kids and Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm in the Q course for 2 years, you know, because at the time the Delta course was a year long. Yeah. You know, and it was challenging. You know, even though I had gone to college, you know, it was actually challenging.
And you were already a combat medic, but still, I mean, it's a rigorous. Yeah.
Completely, you know, different type of medicine. Yeah. And I was just falling in love with being a Delta, you know, and, you know, graduated the Q course in 2008, and a month and a half later, I'm in Afghanistan meeting with my team, 7135. Yeah. And I spend 7 months out there with them, and it was a completely different scenario from Iraq. You know, it was a lot more kinetic, you know, and we got into some firefights. I mean, we got into it, and I was just amazed, like, man, this is an amazing experience, you know. And there was a lot of times I was scared for my life. I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it home.
Absolutely.
You know, but
that pre-2010 GWAT, I mean, it was getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, we were going at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time we left the wire, we got into it.
What do you remember now as you think about between those? You know, because you're talking about you got in some pretty good firefights on that invasion of Iraq, and then you come into Afghanistan. Now you're on a smaller team, but you're in you're getting in fights in both ways. What do you kind of compare and contrast how you felt as far as like differently between you were a combat medic in both of them, obviously with more schooling as an 18 Delta, but it's interesting because you really have a really good juxtaposition between sort of that conventional initial march in versus Afghanistan.
So definitely it was different. So as a combat medic with an infantry platoon, my main job was take care of the guys.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, somebody gets injured. Doc, come on
Right.
over. You know, I wasn't a trigger puller, if you will.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when somebody got injured, I was like, I'm there.
Yeah. Now it's my time to work,
Right.
as opposed to as an 18 Delta.
Right. So
You're
as
a
an
trigger
18
puller the whole
Delta,
time,
as an 18 Delta, and we get in a firefight. You know, somebody got hit, throw a tourniquet on, man. You know, like we have to overwhelm them with firepower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We got to put them out, put them down first, and then I can work on you. You know, and that's the difference between the training. Is, you know, I was more focused on you know, trigger pulling, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, my job as the Delta.
Yeah, you would almost from the outside think it would be different because you learn so much more medicine because you have more training that you would be even more medically inclined. Right. But yeah, I mean, when you're in a small team, there's not the luxury of being able to be like, okay, I can just have this one guy just like, hey, we're in a serious firefight. Like option number one for treating this guy is to return fire and make sure that he doesn't catch any more bullets. So super interesting. You go through that deployment. You come back, you know, then you go to combat again, right? You switch teams, you switch battalions, you end up in combat again. How'd you feel going into that second deployment with SF? Obviously, it's been now multiple deployments in your career, but you know, you switched, you got a new team. How'd you feel going into that next one?
So I felt pretty confident. So I was actually the senior Delta at that time because I was a junior Delta on the previous team. Coming up, our mission was different. We were working with the commandos. Yeah, we're working with the fourth Kandak, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we were working with them. So we were actually conducting unconventional warfare. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was a lot different. We weren't, you know, when I was on the other team, we were driving everywhere on GMVs. Sure. Now we were flying everywhere on Chinooks, and you know, we're pushing guys out, you know, and the mission is different now. It's a lot more like door kicking and unlike
much more direct action focused,
a lot more
opposed
DA,
to like sort of, I don't know, you have a sphere of influence early in that GWAT time where you're in a fire base, but you're spreading, you know, over the course of Afghanistan. As opposed, I did a commando mission as well. If you're a listener, you know, commandos are basically our equivalent force that we stood up as part of the Afghan National Army that were their special forces. So they're very direct action because it was, you know, because the war was still kicking. It was very direct action focused. But we had a lot of helicopter package to be able to go and surgically strike the enemy. And a very cool opportunity. One of the things that I think is awesome, and it shows in your career as well, is the breadth of opportunity you have within special forces and really special operations as a whole. Is like no deployments, very few deployments are similar. You can get a lot of different kind of flavors. So you go into that, you're doing commando mission, kicking indoors, getting after it. Talk me through as you get in, ultimately you have the injury. What transpired up into the lead up to that, and how did that happen? So
prior to the injury, we were flying everywhere on Chinooks, right? And then the mission I was injured on, it was so close to where we were based out of that it wasn't worth flying over. Yeah. So we went ahead and prepped our vehicles, you know, MATVs. Yeah. So we had to get our commando force prepared as well. So we had to make sure that all their vehicles were PMCS and everything else. You know, they were functional. So the night prior, when we were doing our mission brief, we got an intel dump that there was a new SOP for the Taliban. They were starting to detonate themselves on motorcycles next to next to coalition vehicles. So, you know, the next day we start our mission and we're going down. I don't remember what route it was, but we're going down a main supply route to conduct our hit. And I'm driving, and my team sergeant is you know, next to me. We got our EOD tech behind me, gunner in the middle, and then our terp is on the other side in the back. So we're driving, and I see this guy, this insurgent, wearing a blue man dress. That's all I know how to call it. Yeah. And I can see the silhouette of a vest.
Oh, yeah, like he's printing.
Yeah, he's printing. Yeah,
I got you. Okay.
I'm like, oh, my gosh. And he literally came up right next to my tire, my driver's side tire. So I went ahead and I veered off, and he followed me. So I came off the road, and she shook. The vehicle shook. So I was like, okay, I brought the vehicle back on the road. But what happened was the vehicle, I had lost control of the vehicle. Yeah. So I felt the steering wheel shake.
Right.
And I knew, you know, like when we were at PMT, you know, we do rollover drills.
Sure.
Well, I was like, this is it. This is a rollover.
It's
so
happening. Yeah.
I start yelling, rollover, rollover, rollover. And the next thing I know, I wake up and my left hand, all I see are my middle finger, trigger finger, and my thumb up underneath the vehicle. And I just see blood pouring out of my arm. And the first thing I do is call my team sergeant's name. And you know, we're actually on the left side. We're laying on the left side. So he unbuckles himself. You know, he kind of falls on me.
Sure, yeah.
And he goes ahead and he puts a tourniquet on, and he actually tries to pull me out, but I still have tissue attached to what was left on my hand. So he goes ahead and cuts me, you know, cuts my harness and then cuts my body armor off, and he calls over my junior medic. And he comes in, and, you know, I can hear him. He's like, oh, crap, but in a different way.
Yeah, sure.
I'm actually his first trauma patient out of the Q course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, if only there was another 18 Delta.
Yeah.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah. So he's like, hey, Ivan, dude, I got to cut the rest of your hand off. I got to get you out. You're stuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just tell him, get me out of here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he takes his trauma shears.
Because at that point, you got to be worried about a ton of different things. You got to be worried about the enemy detonating something else. You got to be worried about the truck catching on fire. There's so many other things that there's not time to, like,
right, exactly.
hey, let everybody pause.
No.
Let's get this thing off of him. Like, no, man, we got to move.
Yeah. So he cuts the rest of my hand off, and honestly, it felt like the left side of my body was on fire. He had to cut through my ulnar nerve.
Through the nerve.
Yeah. And here's the crazy thing is I talked to him a couple of years, it was probably 2-3 years ago. We were talking, and I asked him, hey, did I scream in your ear? He's like, dude, you didn't say a word.
Wow.
But I heard myself screaming in my mind.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, that's crazy.
Some Civil War,
yeah.
you know, like
that's
battlefield
crazy.
amputation stuff, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So they pull me out, put me on a stretcher, and
as luck would have it, you're left-handed.
Yes,
right? That's your dominant hand. You're like, of all things, like, man, come on, you know, you never want to lose a hand no matter what.
Yeah.
But losing your dominant one, you're like, oh, why couldn't I?
Yeah.
Why couldn't it have been the other one?
So that was tough. But I remember laying on the stretcher, and I'm like, hey, where's the bird? Where's the bird?
Yeah.
And I think it was my junior Charlie. He's like, 5 mics out. Yeah. 5 mics out, and then boom, I pass out, and then the next thing I feel is rotor wash on my face, and then I wake up in the hospital. Sure. At the Roll 3 in Kandahar. Yeah.
Do you remember from that time, like, being an 18 Delta with a lot of trauma under your belt? Do you remember, like, did you feel like everything was going the right, like, as best possible, like tourniquets, tourniquets in the right place, or were you just so out of it that you're like, hey, I hope they got it? You know what I mean? Because I've had guys that, like, tried to sort of quarterback their own care as Deltas. So, you're like, hey, man, we got you, bro. You know?
So the crazy thing is I felt myself going into shock. And I was like, okay, I know what phase of shock I'm in. Okay, I know. You
almost know too much because you're diagnosing yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know this is going. So I got 2 tourniquets on. Yeah. And I guess there was a infantry company that came up behind us that set up security. Okay. And this combat medic comes out. He's like, hey, Sergeant, I got you. And he puts a 3rd tourniquet on my arm, and it literally, like, I was like, get away from me. And I push him away, and I rip off the tourniquet, and I throw it at him, like, get away from me. Yeah. And then I pass out. Yeah. So it was a crazy experience, but I remember almost everything. Yeah. And I remember laying in that vehicle thinking about my wife and kids, like, and I'm praying, God, please don't let me die here. Let me see my kids. I remember that, absolutely. And I just remember seeing blood just coming out of my arm, and I just was like, man, this is not good.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you wake up, you're in the hospital. Obviously, you got a long road to recovery. Yeah. What do you remember from those early days of, all right, I'm no longer in the fire base. I'm not, I'm not making the next mission. You know what I mean? All right, hey, I've got to sort of come to grips that there's going to be some time that, I'm going to have to do a lot of rehab to get back to where ultimately I want to be. At that point, are you still thinking, like, was it immediate, the drive? Like, hey, I want to continue being a Green Beret. I want to be the only, like, were you already thinking that way, or are you just – when do those realizations start to, kind of come in?
So it took about 3 days to get me back to the States. So I ended up in Brooke Army Medical Center, San Antonio. that second night was really rough. I couldn't get ahead of my pain. I was having some really bad pain. I'm having this wrestling match with myself. I'm getting these these. I'm like, dude, nobody's gonna want you.
Yeah,
how are you gonna? I'm self-doubt.
Yeah, you're wrestling with yourself.
Yeah, how are you gonna support your family?
Wow.
What's your family think of you? What's your teammates think of you?
Right.
And then, being a man of faith, I heard a voice in my head say, Ivan, it's okay, I got you.
That's awesome, man.
And that right there lifted so much pressure off my shoulders. I was like, okay, I got it. Okay. How do we make you look good?
Yeah.
So I started making goals. I'm like, okay, you know what? Tomorrow I'm just gonna go for a walk around the floor.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't allowed out of my room.
Yeah.
But you know what? And then you know what? I'm gonna go for a walk, around the hospital. And then I'm gonna go walk around outside. I started making these goals. And then you know what? In 3 months, I'm gonna be in physical therapy, and we're gonna rock it.
Yeah.
In 6 months, I'm going back to the team and I'm gonna deploy.
Yeah.
Now, that didn't happen.
Hey, but you got to have the goal.
Right, you got to have the goals, right?
Yeah, you got to be setting your sights.
Right,
yeah.
I was making goals.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For me, my goal, I made a list of goals like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get back to the team. I'm going to get back on airborne status. I'm going to get back on military freefall status.
Yeah.
I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to become a team sergeant one day.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm going to do these things,
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to be a better husband, a better father.
Yeah.
That's what started creeping in. It was like, hey, let's focus on family now.
Yeah.
That's
great.
You got all these cool, goals for your career.
Yeah.
But hey, let's be a good dad now.
That's awesome.
Let's be a better husband. So that's what I started focusing on. So I spent 10 months at Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio, and dude, every day it was like my job. Like I was there at 07 in the morning till 12 o'clock, and then we would go home, and my wife and I would just spend time together. The kids were in school, and my wife and I would just talk and spend time together, and I was dealing with a lot of things like anger, self-doubt and things like that I had to get through on my own. I couldn't rely on other people to help pull me through. I had to get through this myself, and now there were people out there supporting me.
Sure.
Wife, family, friends, Warrior Care program.
Yeah.
But I had to get through these things, and I had a lot of wrestling matches with God, what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
and we made it through, and I look at myself as I'm not a survivor, I'm an overcomer.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because when you see obstacles, you got to overcome those obstacles, and myself and my family, we continue to overcome obstacles to get to where we wanted to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's phenomenal. I mean, obviously, if you've listened to the show before, we talk about POTIF and human performance all the time because I'm the POTIF guy, right?
Yeah.
But I love talking resilience with guys who have been overcomers and continue to be overcomers. One of the things that I love is, a lot of times guys in our profession, they are either men of faith or they're like completely anti it, right? And one of the things that we talk about with POTIF, is those 5 different domains sort of running together. One of the things I always say is if I'm briefing somebody and they're like, well, what if I'm not religious? I don't have anything with spirituality and whatever else. I'm like, I'm not here to proselytize one way or the other. I'm a man of faith myself, but I will say that having a belief system, having a sense of purpose, a belief that you're part of something bigger than yourself can give you hope. Yeah. Like in that moment, in that day too, when it seems like all else, all other hope is gone. Yeah. There is something about having that long-term hope that keeps you from making the other side, where you're just like, all right, because if you give up day 2 right there, you're in a completely different position right now.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you're still alive, but there's plenty of our friends who've, they've had that, kind of crossroads and it's gone the other way. Yeah. And so, I'm thankful that you're willing to share sort of that ability to keep that hope. And it's just that next small step, right? It's not like, hey, day 2, I made this decision. Everything was great for the rest of the time, but it's just enough to kind of
get you over the hump,
get you on that next
step. Get you back on that path back to recovery. But I tell you, I went through a lot, and I'm not going to lie to you. There was a point where I had thought about taking my own life. And it, it was December of 2013. I'm in bed. I can't sleep because my arm is on fire, and I sit up and I open up my nightstand and I can see my pistol there.
Sure.
Yeah. And I could feel that barrel against my head.
Yeah.
And what I thought about was my son.
Yeah.
You know, that's what brought me back.
Yeah.
Was my son, because I grew up without a dad. You know, and I didn't want my son to go through the type of things I went through as a kid. Yeah. So for me, you know, life is worth living. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because to me, life is about sacrifice. Yeah. What am I willing to sacrifice for my family, for my friends, for my country, things like that. You know what I mean? That's phenomenal. So that's what brought me back was, you know what, I'm going to be a father to my son. You know what I mean? A father to my daughter, Absolutely. A husband to my wife. You know
no, I mean? It's phenomenal, man. As you then are able to finally get out of San Antonio, you go back to group. Obviously, we've got Warrior Care there. We've got POTIF there. Talk me through, all right, man, I've at least crossed a bunch of bridges to now finally, all right, I can go back to group. Yeah. How's that feel as you get there? And then obviously that wasn't like, oh man, ticker tape parade, I'm ready to go back. Like that's like midway journey, but still it's got to feel good to like, all right, man, I'm finally out of there. I can go back to group. I can be around the boys. Yeah. Like talk me through that kind of initial process to get back over there.
So it was actually Father's Day of 2014 that we drove back from San Antonio back to Northwest Florida. That was on a Sunday. That Monday, I reported back to group. Had my orders, went to S1, turned all that in, and then I went straight to the weight room. Yeah. And I met with some of the strength coaches, and you know, they have, you know, Paul in the bridge program.
Oh yeah. Paul, our athletic trainer at 7 Special Forces Group. Shout out to him, Mike, all those guys.
All those guys. Love
Paul's
those guys.
Phenomenal. Yeah. He helped me out a ton as well.
Yeah. And I went, and he's like, okay, what are your goals? I'm like, well, my goal is to get back to being a Green Beret. He's like, okay, well, you know what? We're going to have to start off slow. We got to work on balance, basic strength, you know, get you back. And I had lost like 30 pounds.
Sure, yeah.
So I had to put some weight back on, you know. So like, hey, let's focus on your balance, you know, let's focus on your mobility and your flexibility. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. So for the first couple of months, we were just doing small things, you know, just working on my balance just to make sure that, you know, I could walk correctly, you know. And then after that, we went ahead and started adding some barbell workout, you know, some barbell exercises, you know, like a squat, a bench, you know, stuff like that, you know. And then, so eventually I went, you know, I had to do, you know, a test to get back to, you know, full active duty, if you will, functional capacity test. Yeah. Well, I only trained for 3 months, and I was like, you know, I'm going back to group. I'm going back to battalion. Yeah. Well, I went ahead and failed that because I was impatient. You know what I mean? But
no, but it also showed that it actually is a real functional test. Yes. Because if it would have been some Mickey Mouse crap, then you also probably would have felt like, you know, okay, well, I'm good. I don't have to keep going. So,
but I didn't look at it as a failure. I looked at it as, okay, I learned to be more patient. I learned to be more patient and see what I need to focus on. So I trained for another 6 months. You know, Paul and I, we trained for another 6 months, and then I took the functional capacity test again, and I passed.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I passed, and I was like, okay. They're like, okay, here are your orders back to battalion. Yeah. You know, and I was like, okay, cool. And guess what? I want to do an airborne jump. Yeah. They're like, whoa, okay. So we had to clear it with you know, the group doc. He's like, okay, let's do it. So April of 2015, I did my first airborne op. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I was nervous. Like, and I was praying, oh, God, please don't let me die.
At this point, how many years between?
It was a year and a half. It was 18 months since I was injured. Yeah. And I went ahead, you know, and you know, got on the aircraft, hooked up, you know, follow all my commands, green light, go. And I literally like ran off the ramp. And I'm up in the air, and I'm like, yes, oh, this is so awesome. And the last jump I did was a halo jump. So I actually was trying to fly it like, oh,
wait, this is not nearly as maneuverable.
Like, what am I doing? So anyway, so I land, and I take my chute off, and I take a knee, and I just cry. Yeah. Because awesome. I'm like, I am back. Yeah. I am a Green Beret again. Awesome, I am back. You know, so then, okay, what's the next goal? Okay, we need to do a halo jump here.
Yeah, I've had enough static line.
You know, but I was like, hey, you know what? Yeah. Let's, you know, so I got assigned back to 4th Battalion. I was the 4th Battalion medic for about a year, and then I got pushed over to Charlie 47. Yeah. And then deployed down to Central America for a while, and then came back. And then I kind of got that bug in my ear, like, hey, Ivan, let's go ahead and try a halo jump. I'm like, okay. So I talked to a couple people, and there were a couple people that were supportive of it. You know, I don't know if I can name any names.
Yeah, go ahead. So if it's, you know, we can always block it out if we need to afterwards. But
so Jose Vasquez.
Yeah.
He heard, he heard like, hey man, I hear you want to do a halo jump. I'm like,
awesome.
yeah. And Patrick Colton. Pat Colton was a group commander.
At the
he
time,
was actually my company commander back in 2008.
Yeah.
And he told Lieutenant Colonel Inky.
Josh Inky was team leader of mine.
Yeah.
He was my team leader in Charlie 37. Great dude.
He was like, hey, he told him like, I want to see Ivan in the air in 6 months.
Nice.
So we had me and Jose worked on, they put me in the hanging harness.
Yeah.
Worked on, using my prosthetic. We went ahead and worked on adaptive EPs, and they went ahead and pushed it up to USASOC First Special Forces Command.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what, you need to go out to Yuma first. We need to prove, of concept. I'm like, okay. So I went out to Yuma, and it was May 7th, 2018. I did my first halo jump out in Yuma.
I remember that. Like that got shared around, and especially in the MFF community. I thought that was incredible. Like if you're listening to the show and you're not familiar with what we're talking about, like, okay, we pull, whether right-handed here or now going to the bottom of a container. Yeah. But for those EPs, for those emergency procedures, like if you're going to cut away, your reserve's over here on this side, and like figuring out, okay, is it going to be with the prosthetic? Is it going to be across? Is it, and the easy thing in a non-SOF unit would be just to say no. Yeah. Right. The easiest thing on earth is for Pat Colleton to just be like, nah, I don't want to, Yeah. But I can remember even back in like the early GWAT days of being in group. I remember back when we were at Bragg, my team and I were out at one of the shoot houses, and a guy showed up with like 2 or 3 dudes, and he's like, hey man, can we just co-use this real quick? We got to prove a concept. And we're like, okay. I was like 86 at the time, so I was just, okay, yeah, whatever. And it was one of the guys who had a similar injury, and they had a different attachment to help him use his M4 to be able to clear rooms. Yeah. And I remember I'd been in group not very long, and I remember just seeing it and being like, man, that's freaking awesome. Yeah. Like, that's phenomenal that not only does he want to do it, but they're out trying to fabricate this thing because they want this guy to be a part of the team and whatever. And they did some runs with us and whatever else, and like, okay, take some notes. Like, we got to tweak this, and this. Yeah. But it's the willingness to try. Yeah. To me, that sets SOF apart sometimes. Yeah. It's like at that point, there's nothing easier from any of those dudes at Yuma or anything else. The easiest thing is just be like, nope, hey, sorry, Ivan, it's not in the cards anymore. Yeah. And everybody is like violently the other way. Yeah. Like, yes, come here, let's do this, because we all want to see you succeed. Yeah. We all want to see that happen. Yeah. So man, it's I remember when people like that went around the text chains and like all that stuff, and man, it's incredible to see people be able to come back and achieve their goals. So talk to me about that first MFF jump. You've been doing the swinging trainer and you've been doing all this stuff. Yeah. But there's a difference between like, all right, man, we trained this thing. Like, all right, now I'm jumping out.
Yeah, so it was awesome. I remember, jocking up, putting on my rig, and the jump master out in Yuma, he's doing his JMPI and everything, and he's like, man, you're gonna do good, bro. You're gonna be good, And I'm like, I'm just all chill, and I'm going through my EPs in my mind, and then he finishes his give me that pat in the butt, and I'm like, okay, and I'm working through my EPs, and I'm just like breathing the whole time, and I'm praying at the same time, Lord, please don't let me die here, and we get up on the aircraft, and I sit down, and it's like, man, I'm actually doing this. Yeah, I'm actually doing this, that's man. Awesome. And then you see the ramp go down, and you see the red light come on, and you see the jump master giving his signals, and he gives that signal to stand up, and I'm like, this is it, man. Yeah, this is it.
Moment of truth.
Yeah, this is it. And he gives me, the jump master gives that go, and I just throw myself out of the aircraft, and I just feel that rush of air in my face. And I'm just like, yes.
That's the best feeling in
the
world.
This is it. And I'm flying. They're having me turn left and right and do
basically doing geo and everything.
Yeah. And I'm just doing the basics, and there's I'm looking $7,000. I look over at jump master or the instructor. And I go no more movement. And then about 5.5 rolls up, and it's like clear, and then pull, and I'm under canopy. And I'm like, holy smokes, this is it. I go ahead and grab my brakes, I grab it and put it on my prosthetic, and I
was going to ask, what prosthetic, like, what did you end up settling with is like the best thing to jump with? Is there a certain?
Yeah. So there's a company out of Colorado called TRS. They built, so the socket goes over my arm. Right. The hand is called a terminal device. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So it basically looks like a claw.
Yeah.
And I use a body power. So I wear it's a harness system, right, with a cable, and the harness goes just like you're putting on a regular harness. And every time I shrug my shoulders or push my arm out, the terminal device closes.
Okay.
So in order to reach my brakes, I have to bring my scapulas back.
Yeah.
And then
so it doesn't close.
Right.
Yeah.
Come over, grab my brake, unstow it, put it on my terminal device, and go ahead and just do my 90-degree left and right, and do my testing and all that stuff. And then I just spent the whole time under canopy just flying, and
enjoying it,
just enjoying and looking at the Arizona desert.
Yeah, man.
Following. There was an instructor actually in front of me, and I was following him. Because he's working on canopy control and stuff. Because I hadn't done any canopy control in like.
How many jumps did you have prior, like free fall jumps?
Before I was injured, I had just over 40.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm coming in. I do my final approach, and I can hear people. Oh yeah,
awesome.
and I come in and I land. And it's a nice, smooth walking landing.
Yeah.
And again, I just cried.
Yeah, man.
I was like, oh my gosh, I did
blame
it.
You, yeah.
And the thing is it wasn't just me that did it. It was everybody that had poured themselves into me to get to that point. Physical therapists, strength conditioning coaches, WCP, everybody, my family, my friends, everybody that encouraged me. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Yeah. It's a win for the whole community, man.
Everybody who had the guys out in Yuma, everybody wanted to see me succeed.
Yeah.
And I'd appreciate that so much, and like Jose and Pat Carlton.
Yeah.
They wanted to see that, and I wanted to make them proud.
Sure.
I wanted to make 7th Group proud.
Yeah.
And show them that, hey, you know what? I might have one hand, but I'm not out of the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can still conduct mission.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was really happy. Everybody was excited for me, and I went ahead and did another 6 jumps.
Yeah.
Full full combat load and everything.
Yeah.
Wall locker jump and everything. Yeah. That one sucked.
Yeah, not as fun as the Hollywood jump without everything. Doesn't matter. No matter what, it's not as fun. But
But we got it done. And
but you have to test all those things in the same way as when you're going through MFF school. Like. Yeah. Hey, man, it's not enough to just like, oh, it's a great story, and he jumped once Hollywood, and yay. Like, no, man, I want to be I want to be back to being a real MFF.
Yeah, if awesome. I get called, hey, man, we need you to jump in somewhere. Yeah. All right, well, I have the skills and the ability to do it. I can do this.
I've been checked off on all this
stuff.
Yeah,
everything got checked off.
Awesome.
Yeah, everything.
No, it's great, man. So then now you're doing some stuff with the Warrior Care program. Yeah. I want to talk about that a little bit, but I want to definitely talk about kind of your thoughts as we go into Warrior Games, what it means to you now having done all of, all of this resilience that you've shown, and now being able to kind of put it on display with others who are also overcomers as well.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Warrior Care. Obviously, what you saw as you came through as sort of a customer, but now helping as one of the Warrior Care advocates. What's that meant to you?
So I'll tell you, the second morning I was in San Antonio, Warrior Care program advocate came and like, hey, Ivan, we got you. Yeah. Hey, go ahead, sign this paperwork. Here's a check from a benevolent organization. Here's an iPad. Call, email whoever you need to email.
Yeah.
Hey, what are your goals? Well, my goal is to rehab. And I want to get my family here. Okay, we'll make it happen.
Nice.
Warrior Care program made it happen. My wife and kids came from Northwest Florida, and they got them to San Antonio. So, they helped so much during my rehabilitation in San Antonio. Every day I was getting a phone call from my advocate. Hey, what do you need? What do you need? What do you got? What do your kids need? What does your wife need?
Right.
So when the opportunity came up to be a part of the Warrior Care program and pay it forward, I took it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely,
I was coming up on finishing up my team sergeant time.
Yeah.
And my company sergeant major was like, hey, Ivan, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I want to work with the Warrior Care program. Next day. NCOIC, the Southern Region. I was like, whoa, I didn't want to work that hard, but okay, I appreciate it. I was like, yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of interview process that needed to happen. They already knew who you were.
Yeah.
They already knew. If he wants to do it, he's in.
Yeah. So, so January of 2021, I went ahead and came into the Warrior Care program as an NCOIC, and it's been great.
Yeah.
I have the ability to talk with guys. So a lot of guys that I grew up with in group now are all older. They're all, they all have combat injuries. A lot of guys are first sergeants or sergeant majors or just finishing team sergeant time or getting ready to retire.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey man, I know you got a couple of injuries, and I know you've been injured in combat.
Yeah.
Come here. I'm going to email you this packet, and I'm going to pull you into the program.
Darren Markwick did that to me.
Yeah.
Like same thing because we don't. It's like
we don't know how to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, a lot of us don't ever engage that because it's like, well, I didn't end up in Texas for 10 months, like it's not for me or whatever. Right. Darren, was a kind of mentor of mine. We had been in BCO for a long time together, and he was like, hey, idiot, come here. He's like, how many neck surgeries have you had? Like, and why aren't you even enrolled? And I'm like, well, and he kind of did the same thing. So sometimes it takes another SF dude that's been through the process. I'm like, come here, idiot.
Absolutely, yeah. And
come here, dummy.
I see guys in the weight room, that I've known forever, and I'm like, hey, you need to come into the program because we can help you and we can make sure you get the care that you need.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that our guys are taken care of. You know what I mean? Because nobody else is going to take care of them but themselves. But sometimes you need a kick in the butt to be like, hey, you know what, I need to take care. And I needed it too.
Yeah,
I needed a kick in the butt to take care of myself. So being a part of the Warrior Care program is such an honor for me, and being able to interact with, all these advocates, and everybody involved in the Warrior Care program, it's like a family.
Yeah. And
our main mission is to make sure that service, that, SOCOM service member, whether, you're Green Beret, a SEAL, MARSOC, or you're an enabler, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you're assigned to a soft billet, you qualify.
Right.
So, we got guys that injured in parachute accidents, rollovers, combat injuries, even just a motor vehicle accident. You know what? We'll pull you in and make sure you get the care that you need. We're going to advocate for you. And, a lot of times those that are in need for help with mental health. Yeah. That's a big issue now. Yeah. We make sure that they get the help that they need, but it starts with them. And we tell them, go talk to your doc, battalion doc or company, whoever. Talk to them. Yeah. Get them to, refer you here, and then we'll get you there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about POTF a lot. We talk about Warrior Care some. I guess I'll say for the listener, if you're not familiar with those things, and I get a lot of questions now as like the POTF Sergeant Major, like, hey, what is Warrior Care? How does that fit with you guys? The easiest way to think about it is like POTF puts your resources in your unit. So your physical therapist, Paul, your strength, your athletic trainer, your strength and conditioning coach, your psych, all those things, that's POTF. It's in your unit. You can use it. You cannot use it. We hope you do as a POTF Sergeant Major. I hope you do. But but you can use it whatever. And then we have Warrior Care program, which if you've got specific wounded, ill, or injured, and you specifically need help from the outside. Yeah. So like, hey, the maintenance and proactive stuff from our units from POTF is great. You've got some physical therapy and things like that. But there's a lot of us that need help on the outside. Like I had a bunch of civilian surgeries, all these different things where, you hear of all these benevolent organizations that do great work. Yeah. But somebody's got to connect you in between being the active duty service member and that benevolent organization. Yeah. If you just go straight to that benevolent organization, then you're fighting all the red tape yourself. Yeah, yeah. You can get, kind of on the wrong side of the law as far as like, as silly as it seems, accepting a gift, even if it's a Green Beret Foundation and you're a Green Beret, somebody needs to help make sure that everything gets checked off so that you don't later get in trouble where you've got to like pay something back for some silly reason. And so Warrior Care advocates are there to help you and really there to be the hub so that you just come and say, this is the problem. Yeah. And they know how to connect you to like all of these outside resources. Doesn't matter if it's something in the DOD or something completely civilian, non-federal, whatever. It really is important, and it's a good synergy between the two is why I bring it up. And like POTF and Warrior Care, they're complementary. They work together.
I was just about to say, being able to integrate them to where, like I've been able to do that with guys at 7th Group, like, hey, we're going to pull you in the program, but hey, you know what? You need to go talk to your physical therapist, your doc or whatever.
Go talk to Dana and Tamara, and then
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah. You know, hey, come talk to us so we can get you into this program, you know, for your mental health. Right. So, you know, integrating the POTIF and the Warrior Care program, to me, is key to helping guys, especially guys that are, you know, coming towards the end of their career, like myself.
Yeah.
And even guys in the middle of their career.
Right.
You know what I mean? Helping them as well so they can last another, you know, 6, 7, 8 years to make it to retirement.
No, it's a great point. I mean, that's where, you know, I'm at the end of mine as well. Yeah. I'll be retired next year, and I talk to a lot of guys, and I think you're probably in the same. Like when you get to a certain point in your career, you're post-team sergeant. You look back and you're like, man, I just want to plug in those dudes. I want me as a senior E6 or you know a junior E7 to like take care of some of these things, so I'd be in better shape later to be able to continue. And so Warrior Care is, you know, same with POTIF. It is great for picking up the pieces, and we can do that. But if you're listening, hey, do it earlier. Take it from us. Do it earlier. Be engaged a little bit so that you're not waiting all the way to the end, and then you're trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Whether it's mentally, whether it's physically, whatever. Before we get to Warrior Games, I do want to jump back to one thing because we sort of jumped over a little bit of your team sergeant time. Team sergeant is such a critical position for our community, right? Like that is what you work towards, right? Like coming up, you're not like, oh man, I want to be a sergeant major, or I want to be you know, whatever. It's like, man, I want to be a senior E7, and then I want to be a team sergeant, right? How did you feel when you were able to overcome all of these things? You come back and you're able to actually get to the pinnacle of our career field, and then I just wondered, like, did you give those guys shit? Like, hey man, I'm one-handed and I'm crushing you on these things as a team sergeant. Like, I just think it'd be funny as you know, how much did you give them hell?
So for me, you know, I had, you know, some really good team sergeants, and you know, especially my first team sergeant. You know, he was a very good mentor towards me, and I wanted to, you know, be very similar. You know, mentoring the guys. You know, now I was a team sergeant for a Jedburgh team, so there's only 3 of us. Right. But I still wanted to mentor, you know, my captain. And I had a Charlie on the team who was a level 3 as well. Nice. You know, and I wanted to mentor him and make sure. And he had gone through some hardship too. You know, actually both of them were going through some hardship. So I wanted to let them know, like, hey, it's okay. We can get through this together as a family. You know what I mean? So that was important to me to support them, you know, and let them know that, hey, I am here to help you because I've been through something. You know, it's and I'm still going through it. And every day is a chance to learn about yourself. And every day is a chance to reach out for help. And there's no shame in asking for help. And unfortunately, a lot of guys in our, you know, in our field don't want to do that. And there was a point where I didn't want to do that either. But if you don't, you're going to come to a point in your life where you're either going to fall off the cliff.
Absolutely.
You know, or somebody's going to grab you by the neck and be like, you coming to me.
There's going to be an explosion.
Right. Yeah. You know, you're ending up, you know, in the drunk tank or whatever. Right. And I didn't want that to happen to me, you know. So I went and got help. So I made sure that, you know, both my guys got the help that they needed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's such a critical position, like you said. Team sergeants that care about their guys and invest. I mean, I had some great team sergeants that way that you knew they cared, they wanted to invest in you, and you know, we've seen it so often. It's a lot of times it's a guy who you're like, I can't believe, like, this guy was such a technical, amazing dude. Like, and then all of a sudden
he fell apart,
right? Yeah. And it's shocking every time, but all of us, and I've said this a few times on the show, like, if you're a younger dude listening, like, you're not a unicorn. You have all of these case studies of all of us that went through the middle of GWAT, who did this life and have continued to do this life, and all of us now at the end of it are all saying, like, hey man, go, like, I went to seek mental health, like all of that stuff, right? Like, go take care of yourself and don't wait until it's an explosion, because it's much harder to get your reputation back. Like, we all care about our reputation, and that is the quote unquote stigma of, oh, I don't want to reach out and go seek mental health or whatever. It's like, I get it, man, but that stigma has gone is a lot further away than you think it is. And if you care about being a good team guy and having your reputation, it's much easier to say, I'm working on myself to make sure I'm going to continue, than it is to try to pick up the pieces after a DUI or, you know, some domestic violence thing or something where, you know, the rubber band has been stretched so many times that it breaks, and it's much harder to come back from that. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, and I know it's something that I know that you can pass on there to all of these guys in 7th group.
Yeah.
So let's talk Warrior Games.
Sure, yeah.
So last year they're supposed to do this. It was supposed to be in Orlando.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with the Warrior Games, it's something run by DOD. It's basically adaptive athletes from all over. There's multiple different teams. SOCOM's got a team, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps. Everybody has their adaptive sports folks that come, and most of the athletes, they compete in multiple different sports. I got a chance to go check out some of the Warrior Games a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. SOCOM hosted it in Tampa.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Like you've seen, likely if you're listening to this, you've seen some of the pictures of like archery or weightlifting or some of these different things, swimming, riding the adaptive bikes and all that stuff. But I'll tell you, there were some of those events that I didn't really like, wheelchair rugby, where they're just like smashing each other, and I'm like,
those guys are animals.
Yeah, I was like, dude, there's some legit like crushing sports in that. Yeah. Talk to me about. I know last year they're supposed to do it here. It got bumped again for COVID. They did a virtual thing, but this year, as you're going into this one, as part of Team SOCOM, like what are you thinking? What's your thoughts as you're going into Warrior Games, and what sports are you like looking forward to the most?
So I would compare Warrior Games to like the military's version of Paralympics.
Sure, yeah.
You know, if people aren't really
no, that's great. Yeah.
But for me, so I'm competing in archery. Let me see. Hold on. Archery, indoor rowing, powerlifting. What do you call it? Seated volleyball, and there's one more. I can't remember right now.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I know 5 sports.
Yeah.
But right now, for me, we're about 3 weeks out, so I'm going through my final phase of training. So now it's like, I spent 6 months training, and now this is where it's like, okay, I start fine tuning things. My archery technique, my rowing technique, my bench press technique. I'm starting to be more detail orientated with that. Yeah. I'm taking a little more rest to recover now. Yeah. And then once we hit it, it's like boom, let's go 100% all the way. Let's do it. Let's go live. You know what I mean? That's what it's about. So mentally, I'm just going through rehearsals in my mind. You know what I mean? Like, okay, what's my strategy for the 4-minute row? What's my strategy for the 1-minute row? What's my strategy for powerlifting? How heavy do I want to go on my first attempt? Sure. Things like that. I'm starting to be more detailed into like, okay, let's build a strategy now. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm really excited. For me, it's gonna be the first time. Like I was an athlete in high school and college. Yeah. And performing in front of people was awesome, and now I get to do that again. And it brings a sense of excitement to me. Sure, yeah. I want to bring excitement to the crowd. Like, hey, I want them to support their athlete. You know what I mean? Whatever branch they might be in, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, or SOCOM. Yeah.
Service-like.
Be there for your athlete. Scream out their name. Be excited. Encourage them. Tell them to move, go hard, whatever. Come on, let's go. Yeah. I want them to get that sense like, hey, we are real athletes here. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether your wound is invisible or visible. Yeah. We want that support, and I want all these families to be supportive of their athlete and get excited. You're at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. You know what I mean? Getting all excited.
Absolutely.
I want them to be excited. I want to hear that yelling and screaming and come on, let's go. Yeah. For me, that's exciting. Yeah. And that motivates me. What really motivates me is watching all the other athletes compete. I'm like, man, that's awesome. This person might be a lower body amputee and they're rocking it. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I gotta be like that. You know what I mean? I gotta, that's what motivates me. And I hope that I have the ability to motivate other people, whether an athlete or just anybody else, that they can see that whatever situation you're in, you can overcome it. Right. But you got to work for it. You got to work hard for it. You got to be willing to sacrifice some pain. It's going to hurt.
Yeah. And it's not going to be handed to you.
Right.
Otherwise it wouldn't be worth it.
And people don't want to feel the pain. But you know what? That pain is a sense of growth. Yeah. You're going through pain so you can grow, not just physically, but mentally or spiritually. You know what I mean? And you just got to push every single day. Because every time you wake up in the morning, that's a second chance to get better.
Yeah.
Every time I wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, I got another chance.
One of my favorite things from a couple years ago when we had it in Tampa was I was able to bring my kids and have them, cheer and see those things. And it is a great, if you I think we're going to release this a little bit right before Warrior Games, but if you're in the area or you have the chance to come check it out, I 100% recommend, bring your family out. And like Ivan said, like, to be able to take that and show your kids too, like, hey, man, it's possible. Like you said, you're going to have to work for it. But look what he's overcoming, and you can overcome too. Yeah. It may not be the exact same, injury or whatever else, but we're all going to get knocked down. It's how well we continue to get back up, and it's not a one-time process.
No, every day.
Every day, every step, all those things. Yeah, awesome opportunity. I know do you know around about how many athletes we have from SOCOM that are competing? I think
SOCOM's got about 40 athletes. Yeah.
So, have you talked to any of those guys that have competed in Warrior Games previously? Do they have any kind of feedback of what it meant to them sort of after the whole kind of couple weeks is over? I know one of the biggest things that, when we talk to Warrior Care Program about why do we do Warrior Games, obviously for us as spectators, it gives us that motivation, but also that camaraderie of sort of getting back to sort of a team atmosphere. Have you noticed that? I know you guys do training camps and things like that. Has that been impactful to you as you've been working on it so far?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, when you're on the teams, you're on ODA or ODG or whatever, or, even the B team, you get this sense of brotherhood, family, right? Yeah. And then when you leave that team, you kind of lose that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you lose a bit of like purpose. So when I made it onto the SOCON team, I got that back. I got that sense of brotherhood, that sense of family back. I'm like, okay, I'm back on a team. It might not be an ODA, but I'm back on a team. I'm back around like-minded individuals that want to be
with a shared goal.
Right, with a shared goal that want to be the best at what they do. Yeah. So, there was a guy over from third group, a retired guy from third group who's on the team, and I believe he competed in 2019. And he said it was an incredible experience. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. And for me, it's just like I just want to feel that team feeling, that family
that bond.
That bond, because how you build camaraderie is you go through hell with each other,
right?
You know what I mean?
Shared hardship.
Yeah, absolutely. Shared hardship. You go through something hard with each other, and that builds that closeness. Well, that's what we're doing. Yeah. It ain't easy rowing for 4 minutes as fast as you can. You know what I mean? So when I got another guy who's on the team with me and he's doing the same thing, I'm looking at him for motivation, and he's looking at me for motivation. Like, come on, let's go, bro. Let's go. Push, pull. You got this. So that gives me that sense of like family, brotherhood. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Technically, right? As you've been adapting, as you've used these different sort of terminal ends, attachments, to do it. Talk to me about like how have you found like was it tough finding the right combination for different sports? Like, how have you been working through that to kind of figure out, like, all right, how do I, because it's not just enough to compete. I know you want to win. Yeah. So, like, how have you figured out, like, all right, man, I think this is the right one for rowing or, that type of stuff.
So the main thing was archery. So,
yeah, sure.
I have the compound bow.
Yeah.
And I'm using a terminal device. I think it's called the jaw.
Yeah.
The thing is there's too much wiggle room on there.
Yeah, so, it's got to be very precise for archery.
So I would pull, and it wiggle, and my shot would be off. Yeah. So SOFworks out of Tampa.
Yeah.
They were at the March training camp. Yeah. And they built an addition to my bow. Yeah. And they put it on there, and now my terminal device doesn't move as much.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what it did was it just created a little more girth to it, a little more width. So I'm able to latch on. Yeah. And I can pull that bow now, and I'm more stable. Yeah. So that's been a big part of it. Other devices. So one thing is when I'm rowing really fast, sometimes my terminal device will detach off my socket. So I got to make sure when I get on and I'm ready to row, I really got to push that terminal device into the socket and make sure it's locked in really, really tight, and then I can just go all out.
Get after it. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know. I remember from our time, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I remember seeing you in the gym, like deadlifting, squatting, all these things. Yeah. So I'm assuming things like weightlifting, as you're doing the bench press and things like that, I'm sure that's right up your alley. Was there anything that was there an event or some sort of sport that you're like, man, I've never tried that at all, and well, I'll give it a shot, whether it worked out or not? Did it kind of stretch you as part of the Warrior Games thing to like, all right, because I know they want people to it's not like, hey, I just do this one thing like it is in the Olympics. It's like, hey, you're doing all kinds of different things.
Yeah, so I think seated volleyball.
Yeah,
Oh, and field sports too.
Yeah.
Throwing, shot put and discus. I'd never done that before.
Yeah, sure.
But for me, it's seated volleyball because I'm wearing a terminal device and I have to slide and put my weight on my arm, on my residual limb.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be painful, and I'm pushing and pulling, and that creates a lot of pain sometimes. Yeah. So that was a challenge I had to overcome. Hey, it's just pain. I mean, I'm in pain every day.
Yeah.
But you know what? It is what it is. For me, it's about, hey, what can I do to help my team to win? And if I gotta, suck it up and push through the pain, no problem. You know what I mean? It's for the team. So that was really the biggest challenge, was just figuring out how to maneuver on my residual limb.
Sure.
For
seated volleyball is tough. I mean, we did that before the Tampa ones. We had, where we would come in and play, like some of the leadership played, and I had never tried that before. It was a huge pain to try to, you don't think about it, but moving around in your hands and trying to dive for a ball and all those things. I saw that, like I said, rugby. I'll never forget rugby. Yeah. The first time I saw it full speed, I'm like, holy cow, man. You get your hand caught in between some of those wheelchair wheels. You're done, man.
Yeah.
That's a bad day. Yeah. Well, Ivan, as we wrap up here, man, I can't thank you enough for walking us through. I know you said earlier, like, I want to be that, I want to help motivate others. Well, you absolutely do, man. I can tell you from my own personal, both seeing you in person and just sort of following some of the things like the MFF jump. I mean, you motivate the rest of us that are still in the formation.
Appreciate
but
that.
I know that there are others that hopefully are listening to this that can check it out. I mean, I'll tell you, if you're listening to this, go check out Ivan. Go check out some of those stories from the first MFF jump and things like that. Phenomenal. But I want to turn it over to you, man, and any kind of last words that you'd like to leave with our listeners before we wrap it up.
Yeah, it's about how bad you want it. How far you're willing to push yourself to get to what you want. Whatever situation, like I said before, whatever situation you might be in, you can overcome this. You just have to want it. You have to push. You're going to have to think, like, what do I have to do to get through this? What's it going to take for me physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? What do I have to sacrifice to get to where I want to be? Or how do I get through this situation? And who am I going to bring with me? That's a big important thing, is your support system. I was very fortunate to have my wife and kids and my family and my friends. But you got to be willing to sacrifice to get through that situation. Because like I said before, every morning you wake up, that's a second chance for you to improve your life, improve yourself, and improve others around you. And that's my goal, is to, like I said, motivate, inspire others to be better. And there might be somebody who's on the fence that might want to take their life. And if they see what I've been able to do, and not just me, but everybody who's been there to support me, they see that, they're like, you know what, if he can do it, I can do it. And life is worth living. You just got to make some sacrifices sometimes, because there's somebody in this world that needs you in their life.
Absolutely. Well, again, brother, thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of General Clark, all of us over at USOCOM, thanks for joining us on SOFcast, helping us spread the word. If you're listening to this year's DoD Warrior Games, opening ceremony August 19th, going through August 28th. If you're listening to this months in the future and it's already passed, don't worry, it happens every year. But I'll tell you, you can go onto YouTube, you can see some of the highlights from previous years, and you can get inspired by the amazing work of athletes. Obviously we're preferential to the SOCOM team, but across all of those different teams, there's phenomenal folks that are overcoming adversity and really giving you an awesome opportunity to see. You want to talk about grit and resilience, this is the place to see it. And so on behalf of all of us here at the SOFcast team, thanks for listening to another episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this as much as we did. And please check us out at SOCOM, USOCOM on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And please, wherever you're listening to the show, whether it's on YouTube or whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever, go ahead and rate the show and share it with somebody on your team or somebody that you think could find inspiration from this. And drop down, give us a 5-star review, and hit us up with any of your feedback at SOFcast@SOCOM.mil. And so on behalf of all of us, thanks for listening to another episode of SOFcast.